This is Dark Magazine and I'm your host Nalini Haynes. Welcome to the first inaugural Cryptid Keys Awards for Representations of Disability in Storytelling. In 2016 I announced that the following year I would start these awards. Unfortunately, life promptly kneecapped me. 2020 felt like a dumpster fire in a flood for many people. This, ironically, inspired me to follow through on these awards. We need to celebrate. Let's find things to celebrate. The Cryptid Keys are a celebration of good representations of disability. These awards are for stories first published in 2019, plus there is one retrospective award for a story first published prior to these awards. These stories can be in any medium, but this year they're all books. I note here that although I reached out to various people, only one person, Paul Dark, responded. Therefore, I named these awards with the best intentions but without permission. Should people object, please raise your objections with me. First of all, we have the Donna Haraway Award. Donna Haraway wrote a cyborg manifesto and the Socialist Review published it in 1985. She uses the concept of the cyborg to reject rigid boundaries, particularly those separating human from animal and human from machine. The manifesto criticises traditional notions of feminism, particularly feminist focuses on identity politics, and encourages instead coalition through affinity. She uses the figure of the cyborg to urge feminists to move beyond limitations of traditional gender, feminism, and politics. Basically, if all the minorities of the world united, we'd be a majority, and we could get shit done. When you combine Haraway's cyborg manifesto with disability studies, you get cyborgs, because most, if not all, disabled people are cyborgs in one form or another, who are equally human with all the other equally humans. The inaugural winner of the Donna Haraway Award includes cyborgs of many kinds, including a person who is effectively a quadriplegic using a wheelchair, but whom no one considers to be wheelchair bound. Just like no one considers a non-disabled person to be mobile phone bound or car bound. Congratulations to John Birmingham for the Cruel Stars.
Thank you, Nalini. And just let me say, from what I can see, it looks like a perfect cyborg award. I love the little cogs and machinery, and can imagine it sitting on my bookshelf already.
It does hang up as well, but yes, it can go on a bookshelf. That would be fabulous.
No, that's where it's going to go. So I must admit, when you reached out to me and asked me to come along to this, I was wondering, what have I done? But now that you've outed me with the awards, you've actually set me to thinking about this character and this book. And you're entirely right. The character is Booker 3, and he is he's a piece of scripted sentience. He believes in his soul. First of all, he believes he has a soul, despite the fact that he's really a piece of software. And he believes his soul flows with the software into whatever piece of machinery it is that he's been put into. And at the moment in the series, he's stuck in what I call an X box, which is an external sentience box. And you've actually given me reason to spend some real time over the next couple of weeks thinking about this character and what I'm going to do with him. So, you're not just dressing up my bookshelf, although I thank you for that. But you've given me real food for thought.
Well, that's excellent. I'd also like to add that in this current era of the rise of white supremacy and neo-Nazis, I love the fact that the Nazis, they may not be intrinsically evil in a way that
my
people
space Nazis,
yes, but they're basically coming to kill everybody.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but the thing that's interesting, and they were. I wrote this book. I started writing this book, The Cruel Stars, about probably started 3 or 4 years ago, and the alt-right was beginning to emerge at that point. And I thought, they'd make interesting villains, and so I just projected them about 1,000 years into the future. And the thing that makes them such interesting scumbags is that they're true believers. Like they actually think that they're doing the right thing. They're not, of course, they're scum, but they're interesting to write because of that.
Congratulations again to John Birmingham, and I look forward to your next book. Disability studies is a relatively new field, really only about 30 years old, and omitted altogether by many universities. In the 1990s, researchers and activists began discussing the prevalence of stories with disabled people where the disabled character ended either by being killed, moving away geographically, or being assimilated due to their own personal efforts and not due to society providing disability access. In Tom Shakespeare's 1999 book, Paul Dark named this the normality drama genre. Paul joins us. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't make it today. I'm Paul Dark, and I'd like to congratulate the Criplet Keys Award winner and wish them all the success in the future and congratulate them on their great work, and that I hope it continues and the organisation continues. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to say thank you for allowing me to be here, and congratulations to the award winner, which is thoroughly deserved. So that's probably enough about me. I apologise I can't be there, but I'm still in bed because it's England and we're all locked indoors. So again, congratulations, thank you, and you never know, I may see you one day. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to award Dawn Hounds by Sasha Stronach the Paul Dark Award for writing numerous disabled characters, but especially a character who acquires a disability during the book, who resists being sidelined and written out of the story, and who continues as a character with agency. Congratulations, Sasha.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
That was a gorgeous award as well. I love it. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Thank you very much. This is really cool. It's interesting because I've almost finished the second book. I've been working on that manuscript. When I wrote the first one, I never thought of it as disability rep. I kind of just wrote a character in a situation and wrote how I thought the world would respond to that. But I've been kind of talking with a lot of people now kind of about how to go forward with that. Because I think particularly in science fiction and fantasy, there isn't a lot of disability rep. I think often because we think of science fiction and fantasy in terms of, I guess, only in terms of action, and then we don't think, like, somebody can cast spells, but somebody can't fight in a wheelchair. But also somebody in a chair can do lots of things that aren't fighting. That's not the only thing that exists in the world. So yeah, thank you. Write people well. Do your due diligence. Talk to people who know the situation better than you do. Listen to them. And yeah, just be good. Thank you.
Would you like to tell us a bit more about your book? Because I've just told everybody the bit that really stood out to me. I mean, and the award, I had to make toadstools because I just had to, because I loved your houses.
Dawn Hounds is.
I've just added it to my reading list.
Yeah, I'm writing it.
So there you go.
It is a sort of fantasy noir about some cops who realize the entire police department. They realize there is a conspiracy within the police department and start trying to unravel it. And the entire city is fungal. Everything is grown. Houses are made out of plant matter. Cloning and gene splicing are incredibly common. And actually, just today, I announced that I've signed on with a US agent, and we're going to be going on submission with that early next year. So hopefully it'll get a big US release. Right now, it's basically just available in New Zealand and Australia. Yeah, mushroom houses, everybody is queer, there are pirates, police bad. That's the gist of it.
That's absolutely fantastic. And considering most of my audience, or the majority of my audience, is from the US, hey guys, guess what? You're getting this awesome book really soon.
Hopefully, it's going on submission.
Thank you, Sasha. Next is the Stella Young Award. Stella Young was a disability activist who died too soon in 2014, aged 32. As an activist, Stella made quite the impact. Her TEDx speech, since incorporated into TED Talks, is "I am not your inspiration." In her gentle and polite manner, Stella railed against the tendency of non-disabled people to use disabled people as inspiration, particularly the "if that disabled person can do that, then I can do this." Disabled people were not portrayed as villains because defective body symbolises character defects, are often used as inspiration by non-disabled storytellers who too often win awards for their writing, and when disabled characters are portrayed by non-disabled actors, they win awards for the acting. This is often not a good representation of disability. Today, the Stella Young Award goes to a story representing disability, potentially educating about disability, but without inspiration and other patronising overtones. Jo Spurrier's books consistently include disabled characters. Each and every one of these characters is consistent, even though they may have a character arc where they develop. They still remain consistent within that character arc. There is no character with a shattered knee who, by sheer willpower, walks up a flight of stairs and wins a fight against a villain. Sometimes Spurrier's characters can exceed their normal capability, like the senior Blackbone Witch, Alida, in Daughter of Lies and Ruin. Sometimes, through use of magic, Alida can briefly function as if her feet are not disabled. However, there is always a cost to using this magic, rendering Alida exhausted and ill for some time afterwards. Many people with various types of disability can identify. It's possible to push ourselves beyond our limits briefly, but there is a price that must be paid. For me, it's headaches and worse than usual vision, sometimes for hours, sometimes for several days. I love that Alida is an active, significant character with a consistent disability that reflects in some ways my personal experience of disability and the experiences of other disabled people with different disabilities. And Daughter of Lies and Ruin is, I believe, Jo Spurrier's 5th book. Every one of Spurrier's novels represents disability in various ways, with every character's disability consistent and relatable. It is my pleasure to award Jo Spurrier the Stella Young Award for representation and education without inspiration.
Thank you, Nalini. This really means the world to me. With my first series, I deliberately set out to write a character with a disability, someone like me at the centre of the story. I needed it as a kind of antidote to all those books I'd read, where people get maimed and then shuffled off out of the action and the story finished. In my new series, Tales of the Blackbone Witches, I didn't set out with the same goal, it just happened. But Alida Blackbone's no model inspirational cripple. She's sharp-tongued, hot-tempered and arrogant. She's also physically frail, weak and wounded. It wasn't until after I'd finished writing A Curse of Ashen Embers that I realised I'd done it again and put a disabled person at the heart of the story. And I count that as progress, because that's how it should be. It's good to make a conscious effort to include people with disabilities in our works, but it's even better when they just appear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jo Spurrier, and congratulations. The next award is the Helen Keller Award. I chose this name because when I was in primary school in a mainstream school, I found a biography of Helen Keller for children in the library. This was the first time I'd found any character with whom I could identify as vision impaired. I read and reread that novel over the next few years. The story was in many ways problematic. After all, Keller was completely blind and deaf, unlike me. She was what we call a supercrip, so she's used for inspiration porn these days. And because she broke new ground for disabled people, she didn't offer any hints for having a career. However, she was my first. And being historical, she seemed an appropriate name for this award. The Helen Keller Award is a retrospective award given to stories with representations of disability that predate these awards. Just like Helen Keller's children's biography was a first for me, so was the story receiving this award. I bought this book from Dymocks in Tea Tree Plaza back in 2007, in an era I was struggling to read without disability access. However, this book was worth the effort. Bareback, or Benighted as it's called outside of Australia, is a story about werewolves. The author Kit Whitfield turned the trope on its head. Anyone who is not a werewolf is considered disabled, is shunned, lives on a low income, and has unique battles. This is ironic considering this society needs people who are not werewolves to keep everyone safe during the full moon. So few people are disabled that doctors deliberately cause this disability during childbirth. There are so many parallels between bareback, benighted, and disability in the real world that this story blew me away. Since I was 4, I believed speculative fiction done well portrays the human condition and holds a mirror up to society. This book, however, took these discussions to a new level. 13 years later, I'm still excited about it. So today, I'm pleased to award the Helen Keller Award to Kit Whitfield for Benighted and Bareback.
Well, gosh, thank you for that very complimentary introduction. And I'm delighted to be here, and I'm very excited about this award. I absolutely love it. I really do. I absolutely love it. The thing that fascinated me reading your delightful comments about it is that I was writing about disability before I consciously knew that I was writing about disability, because what I found out after the birth of my son is that I come from a neurodivergent family. My son was one of the first to be officially diagnosed, and if you're wondering why there haven't been any books from me for a decade, it's because I was working on number 3 when my son was diagnosed with autism, and I just had to put everything down and go into crisis management for a while. However, when I was writing Bareback, I think what I've realized is that it very much for me came out of a place where my idea of normal was not the normal idea of normal. And that was something that I knew before I knew. So at the time, I was just writing a story idea that spoke to me and following it through to its natural conclusion. I do have a new book coming out, 2022 spring, from Joe Fletcher Books Quercus. It's called In the Heart of Hidden Things, which is from a Charlotte Mew poem. I like to play around with old folk myths, and there is a myth that you may have heard of, that fairies and spirits are repelled by iron.
Yes.
So, seems to me, if that was true, then you would have smiths who specialised in it. You would have, in fact, a need for fairy smiths, or farriers, as they often call themselves. I tell you, the day I worked out that if you have a miller who's at a mill, a farrier with fairies, I've not stopped being pleased about that. So it's the story of a farrier clan whose surname is Smith. And I also can't tell you how pleasing it is to write about a hero called John Smith. That is the name of the hero. He is called John Smith. Well, the story is that because of an unfortunate incident the night he was conceived, John, who should be growing up to be a man of iron and very sensible, might be just a little bit fey, a little bit touched, not quite sure, but it's becoming important because there is a boy in the neighborhood who definitely is touched, who the Smiths feel a tremendous need to protect from the powerful men of the neighborhood that he is somewhat in the cycle of complicated feuding reasons. So it's the story of how to trying to protect one touched boy when you're not completely sure if your own is touched or not, and how to protect the folks from the people, the capital P people.
Congratulations, Kit Whitfield. I'm looking forward to your next book. Last but by no means least is the Trianti Gongolope Award for Representation of Disability with Hope and Joy. The background to this award: when I was about 4, my father bought me a book of poetry. One of the poems was C.J. Dennis's Trianti Gongolope. As it's now out of copyright, I've included it at the bottom of this post. When my father wanted me to read it to him, I argued because it was too hard. I wanted to read something easier, so I said it was silly. My father told me to ponder what that world, a world where the trees and grass were purple and the sky was bottle green, would be like. I was going to a school for disabled children at the time. I knew I was disabled. I knew I was different, and I knew the experience of disability discrimination even then. I asked if I could be normal there. He said yes. I've loved speculative fiction ever since because there's the hope of being accepted in a diverse world. A Lifetime of Impossible Days is a story full of hope. Working through adversity towards healing and acceptance. The central characters have PTSD and Silver Willer also has Alzheimer's. Through reparenting herself, a real counselling technique with added magical realism, making that reparenting more real, the Willers find healing and experience joy despite their trauma. The story is relatable in many ways, especially in the knowledge that, according to research, at least 1 in 9 girls experience childhood sexual assault. Figures for all kinds of abuse are higher for disabled people, and especially disabled women and girls. Tabitha Bird has taken a difficult subject and written sensitively with no depiction of sexual assault, although the reader knows it occurred. Her 3 central characters experience the fallout from that and other traumas, and they find healing. All the way through reading this novel, I was surprised at how anyone could take such a dark subject and write such joy and imbue me with such hope. Congratulations, Tabitha Bird.
I love that. I absolutely love the name of that award. Super Gumboots Willa would adore the name of that award. So thank you very much on behalf of me and all 3 of my Willers. Yes, like you said, the book deals with Middle Willa, who's around the age of 33, and she does not want to deal with her past and her traumas. And I guess when you first were talking about disability, I was thinking, how does that sort of play out in my book, or how did I show that in my book? And I suppose because I lived not the same experience as Willa, but definitely some deep trauma. I just thought of that as being the way in which you went through the world, and you don't understand how, in fact, post-traumatic stress really is something that has not only it did cripple me in many ways, and I'm still working through a lot of that. And we certainly see Willa working through that, but with strength and power and hope. And I'm proud of Willa for that. And I'm proud of the way that, she eventually, that she meets that little girl, and the things that play out in that book make me proud for the Willas, and also, proud of my own journey in that as well. So thank you for acknowledging the Willas. They're thrilled.
And I don't know if you noticed, but red gumboots. I had to put red gumboots.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you very much.
Well, that is it. That is all the awards. Before we go, would you like to tell us about your next books?
Sounds great.
Who would like to
You
go
go,
first?
Tabitha.
Okay, I'll go first. So my first book was called A Lifetime of Impossible Days, and that's where you'll meet all of the Willers. My next book is called The Emporium of Imagination. And in that book, we meet a family that is dealing, again, with trauma, but a different type in the terms of loss and grief. And just how, I guess, inept we are a lot of times as a Western society at dealing with loss and grief, and how much we don't support each other through it, and some of the ways in which this little boy Enoch reaches out for that. But probably the bit that excites me the most is the Emporium that arrives in town, which is a very magical store that now enables people to have one last phone call with someone or something that they have lost. So that's my next baby, and it's out in March next year with Penguin Books Australia.
So is that inspired by that phone booth at the end of the world where people would go to ring their lost loved ones?
Isn't it amazing? Her book, The Phone Book at the End of the Phone Booth at the End of the World, and mine have the same genesis for the idea exactly. And mine takes it in a completely different direction to hers. But yes, that's exactly where that came from. I was absolutely besotted with the idea of a man that had created a phone booth so that he could talk to his long lost cousin, I think it was, from memory. And then how many people from around the world have since travelled to that phone booth in Japan to talk to their own loved lost ones. And, of course, in reality, we can't actually do that. So in my book, you can actually do that. So, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. And who would like to go next?
I've only got one novel out right now. That is The Dawn Hounds. And we're currently working on that second edition to get something out in the US. Book 2 is... First draft is nearly done. I keep changing the title. I'm really bad at titles. So it's been called Lions and Ghosts, Carry the Dead, a whole lot of things. But look forward to that at some point in the near future. You can find me at Understatesman on Twitter. And yeah, thank you.
I'm just finishing, literally finishing, hopefully this week, the sequel to The Cruel Stars. The sequel's called The Shattered Skies, and it just gets back with everyone's favourites. But once I finish that, actually, then I move on to another Axis of Time book. But after that, a little bit later on in the year, and I'll mention it because I guess it's relevant here, I'm writing a book called Sleeper Agent, which looks at a character who at the start of the book looks to be intellectually disabled, and it's quite a challenge to write. And it turns out that he's intellectually, I guess, very differently abled, but that will reveal itself over the course of the story.
Well, that'll be challenging.
It will be very challenging.
Would you like to say something about the Axis of Time?
The Americans called it the Axis of Time, the whole series, but the first book would have been Weapons of Choice. That's what you would have been looking at. And it was, it's a book that, I don't know, people love it. I wrote it quite a while ago now, and I've had people, not every day, not every week, but it's not unusual. Like, every month I'll get a couple of emails or a couple of Facebook messages. When are you going back, JB? When are you going to do that series again? And I loved it as a series. I loved the idea. Not so much the idea of jet fighters facing off with Messerschmitts, but the idea of taking our modern sensibilities and putting them back into a time when they weren't just modern. Our sensibilities were unspeakable to people from that era. And so I sometime last year I thought it's time. I'll go back and revisit that series. So I'm about 80,000 words into that manuscript. I want to make it about 170, 180 by the time I publish it. So that'll probably be, February, March next year before I hit publish on that.
Thanks again for coming. Listeners and readers, thanks for joining us. At this stage, I don't know who will be my next podcast guest, so watch this space. Stay safe and have a Merry Christmas, a happy holiday, and enjoy yourself. If you're still listening, I'll read the Trianti-Wanti Gongolope for you. There's a very funny insect that you do not often spy, and it isn't quite a spider, and it isn't quite a fly. It is something like a beetle and a little like a bee, but nothing like a woolly grub that climbs upon a tree. Its name is quite a hard one, but you'll learn it soon, I hope. So try. Trianti-Wanti Gongolope. It lives on weeds and wattle gum and has a funny face. Its appetite is hearty and its manners are disgrace. When you first come upon it, it will give you quite a scare, but when you look for it again, you'll find it isn't there. And unless you call it softly, it will stay away and mope. So try. Trianti-Wanti Gongolope. It trembles if you tickle it or tread upon its toes. It's not an early riser, but it has a snubbish nose. If you sneer at it or scold it, it will scuttle off in shame. But it purrs, and purrs quite loudly, quite proudly, if you call it by its name and offer it some sandwiches of sealing wax and soap. So try. Trianti-Wanti Gongolope. But of course, you haven't seen it, and I truthfully confess that I haven't seen it either, and I don't know its address, for there isn't such an insect, though there really might have been if the trees and grass were purple and the sky was bottle green. It's just a little joke of mine, which you'll forgive, I hope. Oh, try. Trianti-Wanti Gongolope. And the book that I had, where the poem was on a double-page spread with a gorgeous picture of the purple trees and grass and a green sky, and the Trianti-Wanti Gongolope was also purple and green. So, you know, I love purple, I love green, and I began reading this poem with the expectation that the trees and grass were purple and the sky was bottle green. So thank you for listening. Stay safe, wear a mask, and have a happy holiday.